Hi, welcome to another video where I ask a producer and performer to get into the details of how they create and perform. Part 1 looked at a DAWless setup, Part 2 at a setup using Ableton Live, and in this episode we'll look at a hybrid MIDI and mainly Eurorack setup. My guest this time is Julia Bondar. I reached out after I saw her 90-minute live set where she performed multiple tracks non-stop, and I was curious about how she plans out her setup and performance. So I sent her a bunch of detailed questions, and luckily she agreed to answer all of them. Without further ado, let's take a look at Julia's setup, workflow, and performance strategies.
Hello, my name is Julia Bondar. I'm a musician, electronic music composer, and live performer. I'm also a co-founder of Endorphins brand, which specializes on development and manufacturing Eurorack modular synthesizers. I perform my music live since around about 5 years ago, and since then I managed to release 3 full-length albums, various EPs and singles. My recent album, Industrial Symphony, which I released on 12-inch vinyl. For this album I created my full-length concert, which I released on my YouTube channel. Brought a lot of attention and questions about my setup. That's why we decided to team up with Lupop and to bring down my workflow. I'm not the type of person that would spend hours digging into DAWs and plugins. For me, it's important to make my process of creating music the more enjoyable and interactive. That's why I promote a lot of this concept of playing music with modular synthesizers, and also I like to keep it quite minimal. That's why, as you can see in my studio, I don't have lots of gear, but I have 2 cases, which one made for live recordings and another one for live setup. I welcome you to my studio. This is my place of joy and inspiration and struggle at the same time. Here I rehearse, compose, record and sing sometimes. This is a place which I like to be most of my time, so please join me and welcome to my studio stop. The main object in my studio are the 2 almost identical Eurorack cases. The reason why I came up with that idea, just because 1 year ago and more I had the frequent gigs and I had to travel a lot with my live case, which always also was connected to my audio sound card. That's why in between I couldn't manage to create any music, any track when I had instant inspiration, and it made my process not enjoyable at all. That's why I decided to create 2 live cases which are almost identical. One is connected directly to the audio interface here, which I also record into my Cubase. I use Cubase for recording almost, and I don't do much except of recording, a little bit more of arrangements. And then I have my live setup, which we will look more closely today, and I will break down my patch and my blocks, how I build my live performance. We will have a more precise look on my live setup currently, and for my main object of my live setup, of course, is the Eurorack system which I built with my experience, and I was building this throughout like 5 years also, removing, adding something, and I think more or less I came up with perfect configuration that I managed to create and perform my last tracks. But of course in the future now I have planned for the new setup and make a new configuration and add new modules, but now we will focus on what I have currently. This is currently 6U and submodular case. I like it quite a lot because it's very small, and together with all the modules patched and with lead, it's only 6 kilo, which for me as a girl to travel with a live performance is really nice and easier, because I can handle it on my own and I can carry it in my hand and even take it on a board, and I will not have any extra questions. My current live setup consists three essential blocks. The central object is of course my live rig of Eurorack modules. Then I have my Beats Pro sequencer and Roland System 1M for my bass line with a Sage 101 plug out. From my sequencer I sent MIDI over USB to my shuttle controls and normal MIDI to my Roland System 1M. To avoid all external patching, because I could for example patch from these drum outputs and during live performance, then I would every time, to save time on the sound checks, I would need to make patch again and again. That's why for me shuttle controls is really handy. I send the MIDI over USB to my shuttle controls, which I have two shuttle controls. They are daisy chained and they are handy to have because it's never too much CV outputs, especially configurable in your live case, because these CV outputs permit you to make very crazy patches in the future, and this is where all the this is the brain of the further patch. And also shuttle control serves me as a power supply, as each row I power by fly and buzzboard. I have to say this, that I compose and perform on a fixed patch, and now I'm not a fan of frequent change of the patching, because I like my process to be more efficient. That's why I know that I can come to my sequencer and compose on a fixed patch. I keep all the modules that I manipulate the most during my live performance in the lower part of the rig, so I have them more visible and accessible behind all the cable jungle. Here is my, let's say, Queen of Pentacles, Magneto and Erika sample drum are responsible for the drum voices. Here I have my fuzzer generator and ground terminal. This is like a skeleton of my main lead voices, and also with the running order I control two voices which I built around Godspeed. I have here 6 HP modules, and around this small amount of space, in my case, I am able to build quite efficient voices, which help me to keep my live setup more dynamic and more interesting and have more textures, because my music is quite minimal, but it's nice to have more and more texture all the time, which can be surprisingly good for the people in the night. We will go my track overflowing today, because this track has everything. It has samples, it has lots of active drums, builds up, rumble, main voice. Everything what I have in my system is present in this track. That's why it's a good example to show you. And for now we have bass playing from the system Roland 1M. For the certain melody, and of course I play around cutoff, a little bit of reverb, and maybe a little bit of resonance. Those are main controls that I can touch during my live performances, and of course during recordings too. To continue with build up, of course, we should add some percussion to my bass melody. I use for this Queen of Pentacles, and also I built small rumble around Strymon to hold the atmosphere, especially in the nightclubs when textures are really matter to hold like some hypnotic mood. So Strymon Magneto helps me a lot in these tasks, and Queen has lots of great samples and analog voices that I will patch. Here you have a block of mixing that I didn't unpatch because they are adjusted on the certain level and the certain amount of sidechain that I need, which is difficult then to recreate again, and I need to spend like few hours to find the proper amount of sidechain, proper levels, and so for the mixing I use Cockpit, Endorphin's Cockpits. I use 2 of them, and this very simple and small one mixer has 4 stereo channel that can be adjusted, muted, and sidechain different amount. That's why, for example, to create more harmonic groove between my bass line and drums, sidechain is essential, of course. That's why I don't touch it, because I really don't want to spend few hours unpatching it again. Let's continue with the patch and to add some dynamics and groove to create the skeleton of my track overflowing. We will start to add some percussion to the bass, right? So here we have a drum sequence. And it means, so here is the kick, this is very small cable, here is the kick, 4, CV output 4, I send to the drum, then I have snare, and we are following the flow of patching of my drum. Of course, we should send the clock. Clock we have on CV output 13. We send it to the clock input of Queen of Pentacles. Here we have already a nice groove that we can follow with the further patching to the main voices. I forgot to say that here is the stereo output, which I also sent to my to one of the cockpit channels, and everything what happens here, all the audio, I can also adjust the level of audio for every drum separately, and then all this summarized audio I sent to the cockpit. I also use Strymon and Erica sample drum to create a little bit hypnotic mood around my voices. So I created my own loops for Erica sample drum, and I have to load them first. Project double, because I use 2 samples from here. I have my project here. It's called Hangar because I recorded my live setup in Hangar in Barcelona. That's why here I have one sample I use my recorded loops, my own loops, and another one I sent a light kick to the Magneto Strymon, and Magneto helped me to create around this kick very nice and moody rumble texture. To patch audio for sample drum, I sent kick to Magneto input, and another loop sample I sent to the Queen of Pentacles aux, so it will be summarized to all these drum voices. So let's listen. This is my loop, and here is the kick, which are already reflects on magneto rumble. The result of this patch on the track. We will start with the first pattern because it has very nice atmospheric loop. So here we already have the structure that can be quite long, holds the atmosphere of nightclub, and it's already quite a ready track. But of course, to add some development, some more euphoria, I love to add melodic, textures. I love to add like melodies. For me is important because I feel like melody can reveal also your talent my talent as an artist, also give some moment of euphoria during nightclub because people like, and even they like very industrial things in the nighttime. But I think when I see their reaction when they hear some melodic music, of course they are getting more energized and getting more happiness, of course, and I want to give some happiness to people, of course. I forgot to mention that I control my loops by velocity, and this same trigger can launch different loops just because every loop adjusts for a certain amount of velocity. So let's keep going with the melodic voices, right? As I said, my main skeleton for the melodic voices, this is a combination further generator with ground terminal, because ground terminal has great filters, it has great effects, and also further generator has lots of different possibilities of modulation, and this combo can give you very huge amount of varieties of different texture, voices, and same melody with different modulation, filter, and effect. Of course, can sound so much different. That's why it also gives me some possibility for experiment during my live performance or during my preparation to it. Not to forget to talk about tune during performance, because this is can be very stressful, and even further off very good tune, and it stays in tune for a long time, and even warming up more quickly than many other oscillators. But still, of course, I need some 10-15 minutes to warm it up before I start to perform, and of course I take this time for sound check. But of course, do not to lose my octave. I have these lock knobs which I customized for myself, and to stay in tune I have this autopilot module which helped me to not lose my octave but still stay in tune by pressing automatically. But we should have in mind autopilot during patching. That's why we bypass key input through the autopilot, so it also tracks all the notes and holds it in tune, or you can hold the tune by pressing 1 second. So instead of patching to my volt per octave to key input of further generator, I patch it from the I patch this to my autopilot, and then I drop it out to key input of the carrier of the main oscillator of further generator, and then I should send some reference wave, the wave we would not use during my live performance, for example square wave. I send it to tune in. So as you said, these both LEDs are illuminated. It means that the autopilot is already tracks the tune of oscillator. Same we do for the another voice in modulator, another part of oscillator. When we have this voice patched, we should press the A note and adjust its... Yeah, as you see, the autopilot catched and made the voice in tune. And same we repeat for the bass line. And all together they will be. Has this final stereo output, which also goes into one of the channels of cockpit, and all the patch what was done in the footer generator and ground terminal summarized on this final stereo output. Also, ground terminal has this section of I can change different type of filters and different type of effects that's why it gives me some field for experimentations, and also has very nice and lush reverb. Let's hear it. It's important to do not forget about Strymon, because then sometimes it's not really sounds cool in some tracks, and also you should apply your musical feeling and maybe take away and manipulate these parts a lot, because sometimes it just not harmonically sounds in the whole composition. So yeah, this is a basic skeleton what I have. This is most important, which the system, the recording system what I also have, has same patch, but I also have their black noir, because I have more space there. I'm not limited by weight. For the recordings, I can play with more varieties of different percussion and sounds and textures. And for Queen of Pentacles, here I have like the most basic and maybe a little bit safe but best working 909 kit. And it's already quite a lot of we can hold on this structure quite a long time of my performance during like venue performances in venues. We can have a lot of space for playing, experimenting. Also might change some effect, might change some filter. I don't do it during performances, but I can, for example, come up during a rehearsal prior the actual performance, so I can also play with that a little bit more. And the final part, which gives me some more dynamic, and as I said, Beatstep Pro doesn't have so much power for, like, first of all, it doesn't have so much power for composing music, because it only has two melodic tracks, and one of them is fixed, it's bass, and another one is lead, and I need some more textures, and of course I need some more. And Running Order is a perfect sub sequencer, which is only 6 HP, very small but very capable of, and I'm able to sequence two voices with it, and it always it's random, it has tuplets, it has Euclidean rhythms, different dividers, and I'm very happy with it because I can also experiment, and it gives that dynamic and groove to, even when I don't use much melodic voices, but it already sounds melodic by using Running Order with two other synth voices built around Godspeed. So let's make another patch around these two voices. And we will see how it sounds together. This is actually will be final part of the patching, and then I will perform the whole track, how it should sound in eventually as a ready product on the stage. The whole patch is done, and this is the final result. The final patch is what I go in the stage confidently and perform, and now we will see how it holistically sounds in the track overflowing. So let's start from the whole beginning, and then I will be explaining and build up the track. So you just saw my performance, and I made it on purpose for you to show the build-up of the track and transition between one track to another one. So as you saw, I interact a lot with the knobs on my system because it has a lot of controls like TOFs, reverbs, modulation, and so on. And of course the subsequencer running order, which I control my two voices, is always an experiment, and they control me more than I control them, and I just let myself flow according to the music and my feeling of musicality in the particular track. I have all my patterns prepared beforehand going to the stage. I'm not experimenting with composing on the go. So all the drums, all the leads, bass, especially those skeleton that I explained when I patched, is made beforehand, and then only this running order situation that I only can have a little bit experiment around, but the rest I mix the patterns, and I always start with very minimal and very calming sound, and then I build up the tension until the middle of the track, when I let more elements to pop up on the track, like more active drums, like more loud bass drum, and maybe I can not remove some elements, but otherwise put until the middle of the track. I like to put all the elements together and then again remove one by one by the end of the track, but it all of course requires some musical feeling, and I let myself go with the music again, because sometimes it's experiment and same live will never sound the same again. Here I will show how the most biggest tension in the track overflowing. So I can mute running order here, both voices of running order. This is mute or unmute again. Then I can mute my drum and unmute running voice, running order voice. I can use, for example, the filter from saw the transition when I made a transition from the track Overflowing to the track Fire, which I was collaborating with Reverb, but it is implemented in my live setup without his parts, but it's already enough for me to perform it because it has enough elements also. That's why I made this transition, and as you saw, my approach to the transition is to leave one element from the previous track and change some notes for the bass line what was previously, and which will remind a little bit of a next bass line. Still not the previous one, not original bass line from the previous track, but it already has some notes and captures the scale of the next project. This way it permits me to transition more melodically. It do not make like big stops and big pauses between tracks. Especially I'm oriented for people dance and not stop dancing during my live performance in the nightclub. About my live mixing solution, as I said previously, I used two cockpits from Endorphins. Those are very simple 6 HP, small, handy 4-channel stereo mixers that I use 2 of them in my set, and every audio output, every voice what I have in my system goes to each channel, and then I adjust certain amount of levels for certain voice, and also adjust certain amount of sidechain, for example for bass and kick. Let's for example listen some of the, here is my simple bass without sidechain, without kick. Then sounds more balanced, sounds better, more like dance music finally. Then also what I like in my bass, maybe it's, I heard from many professionals that it's not really applicable on the stage during live performance, and people afraid lots of reverb. But I actually believe, and this is like, maybe I will learn it with experience, that music doesn't have a certain rules. And I like this raw power of live instruments, and maybe they don't sound super perfect. Of course they should be well balanced, but this raw power gives the special feelings that you cannot feel from the DJ mixes. And for example, I like to add some reverb on my bass, especially in a certain tracks. This track Overflowing also can be a good example. Really has that moody, it gives the mood for a certain period of time. Of course you cannot keep it for the whole performance, but for the certain track it works very well. Yeah, for example, when I released Industrial Symphony, why I called this album this way, because when I was creating it purely on my system, and I felt like I'm a conductor of it, and this is my orchestra, this is a member of my band, they obey me and they never let me down. That's why I felt super confident about also the sounds what the system was able to give me, especially when I was composing this album and making patch and trying to figure out what extra I can add, what I previously already done. I extracted that very nice from ground terminal sound. So I felt like this is so powerful, this is such a orchestra, and that's why I decided to call this way my album. But since then this trick became my this never changed. I always use and I'm always satisfied, and people ask me how you did it, and this is very simple. Actually, this is super simple trick, but I'm very happy that I discovered it. As for my live mixing solution, I don't have many, as I prefer to keep my case minimal, and of course it's very hard to stand out from this perfectly mastered and compressed DJ sets that they play mostly because it's easier to bring one DJ than a live performer, of course, now on the set. That's why I have, in my case, I have two cockpits, which I said at the beginning. Those are very small handy stereo mixers that I can adjust level of each voice and route them directly to my TC electronic finalizer that I use to compress my sound a little bit, so it will not overcome the limit of in the clubs, so I can be still a little bit compressed and better. In sequencing, I have to say that I don't use Beats Pro to compose my melodies, and I compose it on external keyboard, and then all the patterns and melodies I save to Beats Pro, and I use it only to sequence my live setup. And also, for example, for me it's important the sequencer to be part of my live rig case to avoid all external connections and many small boxes to carry around. Of course, I want it to be part of my future case, which I plan to build very soon. That's why we at Endorphins were developing for past 2 years ground control. This is our most ambitious product, but it has everything what I think would serve me well. 2-octave keyboard and 3 melodic tracks, then also drum tracks. This is must be very handy for me. That's why I wait when it will finish its development and I can finally install it in my new case. When I just started to compose my very first tracks, I didn't have any idea about polyrhythm and polymeter. For me, everything was just a try, an experiment, and I was discovering how I can do and which direction I can move. But then I found out that polyrhythm in polymeters really works well for my music, and I started to implement it more and more. And for example, my recent track Enchanted, which was released as a single, has essential part of polymeters in the melody, and I think we should listen it now. This melody pursues all the track constantly. It doesn't change, it doesn't go, but still because this is a polymeters, it doesn't make my track boring. Let's listen. saw, also I added some polyrhythms from a running order, and it always follows its flow itself. I just really let myself go. Explain my recording process, which is not very different from my live setup. Here you can see my recording case and everything routed into the sound interface, and it constantly routed. I never unpacked. This is the beauty of it. So it has the same blocks, it has the bass as Roland System 1M, it has that main melodic voice with autopilot, fuzzer generator and grand terminal. It has drum section without rumble and magneto, because I can add it maybe in the post-production. Queen of Pentacles and Black Noir, because I have extra space, I decided to have both of them here. Also I have one voice made of Milky Way, Squawk Dirty and Godspeed, controlled by running order, and altogether it makes almost the same logic and same patch as I have on my live system. The main difference is that all my voices are routed not into the cockpits, but they go into the sound card Focusrite, and also a DAT expander, and my Focusrite has 8 channels and DAT also has 8 channels, so altogether I have 16 channels in multi-track recording. Here I have example of the same track overflowing, recorded in one take from the modular system. And for example, how I create like very basic structure on my on Beatstep Pro, and just let it go, let it play. Then I manipulate some controls, modulation, and the same controls what I do on my live system, cutoffs, and I build development by these controls, and then I just let it play and record itself in one take. Of course, I can repeat few takes if I felt that I didn't do it so gently. I try to be more sensitive during recordings. I try to let myself go with the flow of the sequence or melodic music, and I try just to imagine myself like it's a ready melody, and how I would love how it would sound. That's why I just adjust some modulation according to my feelings. So as you will hear now, the track overflowing will sound recorded same as in a live arrangement on my live system. And to finish the tour in my studio, I think it's important to talk about mix and master of your tracks, because this is the way you present your final work to the world. This is the way your fans will hear your music. This is the way it will be remembered. This is the way it will stand out among other tracks in a different playlist. That's why it's important to invest in your music, invest in a good quality mixing and mastering. And to be honest, I don't do it myself, because as I said at the beginning of the video, that I barely work with DAW beside recordings and arrangements. That's it, and I don't have enough patience to spend shaping sound, experimenting with different plugins and so on to make it sounds beautiful. And maybe also beautiful is subjective. That's why I really prefer to work with professionals. For example, part of my album Industrial Symphony was mixed by Guy Loison, who is a French producer and also Eurorack manufacturer. We have a very common ground with him, and I admire his sense of beauty, and he is really expert of that EBM French electro style, that some of my tracks have feeling of it. That's why he really made my tracks sound in a certain way. And other part of my album, those tracks which were more techno-ish feeling, I worked with Alan Lockwood from Bass Valley here in Barcelona, and for my recent track Enchanted, I worked with Glenn Morrison, who is also a very famous DJ and electronic music producer. I want to thank you, Z, for this opportunity, because I think this is a great platform for me to talk about my setup and to answer the questions what I had under my live concert video, because I knew exactly what I should talk about in this video. Also, I want to thank you a lot for all the people and all the fans who supported my music, because this is very valuable for independent artists as me, and I accept all your love, and I'm very grateful for this. And thank you for watching this video, and I wish you all the best.
So that's it for this time. Thank you so much, Julia, for agreeing to go into so much detail about your creative process. If you'd like all the tips shown in all my videos, including this one, be sure to check out my ever-expanding book, available to the good people who support this channel on Patreon. Hit like if this was useful. Don't forget to ring the YouTube bell if you want to make sure you don't miss the next one. Links to other episodes in this series in the description. Thanks for watching.